Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Q&A. We're going to take about the next hour to get to know our candidate a little bit better. He's been around the area since about Tuesday. His lovely wife, Cindy, arrived today. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we're just going to take some time to get to know them. He's going to give us a brief bio on where he's at and what he's been doing. And then we'll go into some questions, and we'll also take questions online. So we're looking forward to this evening. Welcome, Cindy. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
And I guess the first question, or the first thing we'd like to hear from you is just where you're at, and just describe a little bit about who you are and how you kind of came to this point of coming to Vernon to see us for this week.
Okay. Go ahead, Cindy. You start us off.
All right. Well, I just flew in today from Calgary Airport. It was snowing and blizzarding there. It was nice to come to nicer weather. So we lived in Cochrane, just outside of Calgary, about 20 minutes outside of Calgary. And we have been in that little town almost since the time we got married. So we got married, and 2 weeks later we started as Jason started as youth pastor at Cochrane Alliance. So it's just a beautiful town just outside of Calgary. And we've been living there except for the 2 years that Jason went to get his master's at Regent. So we have 4 daughters. They are aged 9, 11, 14, and 16. And so our house is busy and full, and Jason loves having all girls. And
well, that's what I was going to say. Like, how's that for Jason? All women in the house.
He's a lucky man. He's a very lucky man. So yes, they're lively and fun, and we're really enjoying this age right now of them being not super little and not fully launched. So we have a full house, a good house, full of girls. So yeah, we love to do things outside. So we love to hike and bike as a family, and Jason loves to bike lots by himself and other friends too. Cochrane is near the mountains, so we get lots of beautiful mountain time. And camping, we love camping. And yeah, so that's a little bit of who our family is. Our kids are in elementary, middle school, and high school. So we have the full gamut, and that's a little bit about our family.
And why don't you tell what you do with your time?
So I have a business at home. I work part-time, and I love being able to be at home and have a business and be able to be with my kids. So I work online or from home, kind of teaching women how to run businesses from home as well. So actually had a really interesting long conversation with the guy beside me on the airplane all the way. It was a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but so I don't know.
All pastors' wives play piano, so do you play piano?
Yes. Good one.
I like that, all pastors.
Yes, all pastors' wives. I can play the piano. I did play early days, but actually our oldest daughter, Katie, has taken up more being on the worship team, so it gets me off the hook a bit. So she plays bass on the worship team, so she loves that. So I haven't played on the worship team for a long time, and I probably am not that good, I would say. Not that good. So, yeah. But over the years, I've loved doing kids ministry. I love working with kids at church. Right now, we're doing a women's ministry where I'm doing some speaking Thursday nights. I'm really enjoying the group of women that I'm working with. And, we have lots of people over in our house. Maybe before COVID, more people than COVID times. But, so it's a little bit about me, a little bit about us. Yeah.
So I'm Jason, and Cindy's giving you a bit of the biography. She grew up in area just northeast of Calgary in metropolis of Bicycle and Three Hills. And I started out not too far from that in the dinosaur capital of the world in Drumheller, Alberta. And was saying to some of the other groups that were here today and yesterday, the neat thing about that is it crosses over a little bit. In the same town, in the same church growing up was a girl named Teresa Clark, who people in Vernon know as Teresa McKnight, and she was one of my childhood friends. My dad was the pastor of the Alliance Church there, so that was the first chunk of my life, and the second chunk being in Lesser Slave Lake, north of Edmonton, 2.5 hours. And that's where I did grade 5 and graduated from high school there. As my family was highly involved in the church, my mom and dad had lots of people in our home all the time. Youth group really was a big part of my growing up experience. So leading it, participating in it. I had some great youth pastors that were significant mentors and models in my life. And one of them in particular gave me inspiration to some degree on what being a youth pastor could be like and how fun that would be. And it was probably sometime in my junior high years where there was no specific sermon or book that I was reading, just a general sense that I had that it was natural for me that I was going to be a pastor.
Well, that's in your family. I read your bio, and you've got a whole series of family members that were pastors before you. So that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Sure.
So my grandfather, who comes from a Ukrainian background, was a traveling evangelist with Slavic people, mostly Ukrainian or Russian people, in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and then in some areas in southern BC. So then my father and my uncle, so both my grandparents' 2 kids, both went into ministry. My dad and my uncle still serving in different capacities with the Evangelical Free Church of Canada. And my youngest brother, Matt, is also a pastor with the NAB Church in Fernie. And my cousin is also serving with, I don't even know the denomination of his church. I don't know.
So you're in the family business.
It's a family business.
All our daughters will be pastors. No?
Yeah. I do think there are some unique privileges. People often talk about being a PK and the liability of that, or expectations that people had of them, or some kind of issue that they saw their parents having one kind of public life, but in behind the scenes that didn't line up with what they saw at home. And I just consider it a privilege that I saw a high degree of consistency. Of course, my parents weren't perfect, but a high degree of consistency on what they were saying to the people in their church and their community and how they lived at home. And so it seemed natural for me to do that. And I never really received any pressure that I needed to do that. So we met because both of us, after graduation, wanted to go to Prairie Bible College, and we met right away, started dating a few months after we met, and we don't have any other boyfriend or girlfriend history. So we were not high school sweethearts, but just after high school sweethearts. And like Cindy said, right after graduation, we were married that summer, began in Cochrane, and I got 5 great years from 1997 to 2002 serving as the youth pastor of Cochrane Alliance Church. That was a season of great health for that church community, and I thought great things were happening because I was so awesome as youth pastor. Probably more the whole church was doing good because of other leaders, and I just got to a rising tide raises all boats, and I got to be one of those boats. And just wonderful years of getting to know kids, seeing some of them come to know Jesus, and missions trips to Hungary and Kenya and Mexico, and fantastic outside stuff, and seeing students develop as leaders. But at the end of that, I wanted to get a little more education and wanted to test my academic chops. So resigned in 2002 and went to Regent College in Vancouver to study, which were another great gift in my life. And Cindy continued to work and support us through that. And at the tail end of that, she got pregnant with our oldest, Katie. And got your hair. And I really, really liked BC. Wanted to stay in BC if I could. we felt that it wasn't time for me to take a lead role, but I did want to preach. And so I tried to find a BC job where I could be at a support role as a minister, but not be the lead and get some preaching, and no one wanted to take me.
Nope.
Really?
Yeah. So, but my old boss from Alberta said, hey, would you come back to Cochrane Alliance, and I'll give you 40% of the preaching, and you can do some small group stuff. And it was too good of an offer to refuse. So we went back, and about 6 months later, he resigned to take a role with the district in Alberta, the Alliance district in Alberta. And the board asked at that time whether I would consider moving into a lead role now. And for better or worse, I said yes. And in 2005, in May, I became the lead pastor, where now that's been 15 years, more than 15 and a half years as lead pastor. And that's really where I think we got into grad school of personal and life development, realizing that senior leadership is a lot more complex, not to take anything away from youth pastors, but being a senior leader had a whole another realm of challenges that were beyond my current maturity, and was really stretched and challenged as a young leader starting at 29. People were super gracious, and our church family in Cochrane has been super patient with us. But I'd say after about 4 or 5 years, we started getting my feet under me as a young minister. What really floated my boat was launching the church into service and really considering how do we serve the people of Cochrane well, demonstrate what it means to have a life full of Jesus, so really began to experiment with different models of getting people out serving in the community. And part of what we did was ask ourselves how our building fit into that overall vision and ministry to serve the community. And we said, you know what, we need some extra space for what we're doing with our families, but we also really need this space to serve the community of Cochrane better.
So more of expansion for outreach.
That's right. And going, how could this building be usable not just for the church, but for the town? And so that led us to a big renovation project that started there's lots of fundraising and planning and consulting with the congregation. But in 2016, we started construction. It took 13 months. And learned a lot about trusting God and working with a group of people. What we called that, we had to move out of the building for a year, and we did our services in the afternoon and Sundays at the Baptist Church just across the street from us. And that was good, but also scary at times. We called it our wilderness experience, not realizing that we would go into another wilderness experience a few years later with the pandemic. So, yeah.
That must have been really, I mean, you've been put out on the street, more so to speak, for a period of time, and everything has to move and everything has to carry on from there. So that must have been a challenging time.
We put all our furniture in containers. The church office moved to a little townhouse that we rented up on the hill, and services on Sunday happened at the Baptist Church. We did stuff in homes or other locations, and there are some neat things that happened there, although I would be lying if I didn't say that I like having my own space too. So,
no doubt. Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm going to move into a few questions, if you guys are ready for that.
Great.
One question would be, maybe you could describe what your kind of normal day would be when it comes to, things like prayer, time with the Word, so on. How does that look like for you?
Cindy, why don't you go? Because I know you've been working on some good practice and discipline, and I can share mine too.
Okay, well, little interlude. It's funny because yesterday and the day before, Jason being here and I was at home, he called me a few times, and a few times he's like, man, I sure know that I can talk a lot. I've been talking so much. And just listening to you, I'm like, yeah, he can talk a lot. Just give you the whole story, right?
Well, that's a good thing right now.
So you're asking really kind of what does our time with God look like? Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I think over the years it looks a little differently in different seasons. With little kids, now our kids are a bit bigger. I know for me, I've been enjoying the last while getting up early and prayer journaling. So Just really writing down, I find like putting on the fireplace and just writing and asking God questions and listening. I've also been going through the Bible in 1 year, but audibly. So, yeah, so often I can be exercising or, getting ready.
That's a great way. Yeah, I use that as well when I'm driving.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's a great, so I love, this one is, there's a devotional by Nikki Gumbel, and I find it really engaging and helpful, and then just listening to different passages in the Bible. And then a unique thing with COVID was, of course, Jason was at home working for the first time ever, and one of the things we decided was that, okay, now is the perfect opportunity for us as a family to take our girls through really what does time with God, what could it look like, what are different ways. So one thing we chose to do was Tukmaga, and it's just the acronyms: thankfulness, confession, meditation, and guidance. And so just kind of spending like a couple weeks on just thankfulness and talking through and then sharing. And so they all had to be up and they had to be in the living room, and we, that way we were starting together. So it was just a really awesome family time to be able to do that with the girls. And yeah, so I feel there's been, like, God has, Jason was doing an Arrow leadership course over the last year and started about 2 years ago, and there was segments where he would be able to go in person for 5 days to different locations. Then there was mentoring in between and all sorts of things. But the last segment in person, I got to go, and one of the days we just spent a whole day having someone kind of ask us questions and listen to God. And that was kind of a little bit of a turning point for me, because we just had all this time to listen to what God was saying and write it down. And it was really rich, because I had no problem just like feeling like God was talking to me. And yeah, so over the past few years, I've just really enjoyed more of the listening part as well. So, and yeah, sometimes just wherever I am, and then sometimes writing that down, and just, yeah. So it's a little bit about me, and I do feel like, yeah, it's always different, always changing. Right now we're doing at our church called the Anchor Initiative, and so we're looking at building in habits around resiliency. Hearing from God is where we're starting right now, and we're taking our group of women. So I'm excited to go, okay, and I'm meeting with a small group of women and just deciding, okay, what are the habits we want to grow in or lean into with listening to God. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. But I think it's a little piece of, did I answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Always want to know how you kind of go about your day, right?
Yeah.
How about you, Jason?
Yeah. For me, my life mostly has revolved around scripture reading and prayer. Those are the two bedrock practices. So generally I like to read systematically and take my time working through a book of the Bible and spending time in prayer. I have actually this week will be a monumental moment in my devotional life, and for the first time I will fill up one entire journal with my thoughts and prayers and devotional writing. I haven't really dug journaling that much, but it's a discipline I've been working on for the past...
He's learning from me. He's getting converted by me. Yay!
Sounds exactly like my wife.
See?
She's a journaler, and I struggle, but I do.
Yeah.
So that's been new for me. Also, I feel, along with Cindy, doing community life with other people and being accountable for how I'm tracking on my nurturing my soul. I just do better when others are doing that with me and know about what's going on in my life that way. So being part of groups and talking about what we're reading and doing has been important. I do like prayer walking. Most weeks I do a few times where I just go for a walk. We have a nice neighborhood with lots of creeks and rivers and forest, and I just walk and pray and just spend time with God that way. And also part of my regular routine in work is retreat times. I know you have Fairhaven here in Vernon, but in Cochrane we have a place called Kingsfold where I think it's a thin space where God comes close. So that's part of my routine, but pretty standard and traditional in my practice. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question we have, this is one that was submitted by a member of our congregation. What is your sense of what God wants you to accomplish, both in and through VAC? You've had a little bit of an opportunity to get to know us. We've met previously when you've come to the pre-candidacy portion of our journey. And, you've asked some questions, and we've asked some questions of you. So I think by now you have kind of a bit of a handle on VAC. So how does that look?
Okay. Well, Glenn, you as a board have identified some priorities on what you would like to see. So I would say at the beginning, for sure, I would be taking my cues if we decided to proceed together. So some of the priorities you've laid out is getting a cohesive vision and maybe refreshing what the sense of what Vernon Alliance is about and where we're going and how we might do that. So that would, I think it would be good if you have a new leader to get clear on what we're doing together. Making sure our staff team is healthy, equipped, unified, and ready to proceed together is another priority you've laid out. Continuing to teach strongly. I know as we've talked together as a board, as I've talked to some of the people here even this weekend, the community life of our of your church in terms of making sure people are connected together in vitalized and supportive ways, particularly as we're in times of pandemic, and then reaching out and engaging next generation, younger people, younger leaders emerging in the church. I think if you've taken the time this year to identify those as priorities, I think those probably should be some of my priorities. And then maybe to how we would do that. Some leaders may find that their model is to go to the Lord or to search their heart, to come up with a vision for the church, bring that from the mountainside and say, okay, here's where we're going. And I think some leaders can do that effectively. It's not my model, and that I really feel like in order to do effective ministry here in Vernon, I need to become an expert on Vernon, and I need to become an expert on Vernon Alliance and the people that make up those communities. And so I would prefer, although you've outlined some priorities already, I would love the freedom to really use the early days of ministry to get to know the staff team, to get to know those in leaders that regardless of whether they're paid or not, and begin asking questions of what are we seeing in our community, what are we seeing in our church, what are some tools that God has put in our hand, what are our passions, and then how can we articulate those in very succinct ways that can begin to guide and direct us as we begin to look about what we're going to do specifically. And that would take some time to do, but that would be the most important work, I think, at the beginning of a time that if I potentially came here, I would see that is how we would determine and how we would get an answer maybe within a year. I would love to have a really, really, really good answer to that question. I think I can only give a generalized one right now.
No, and I get that and fully understand that. One of the things you did address was our key areas, our key result areas that the board identified. But more than that, the congregation identified, because we did the surveys last year and they came with those results. So that was, addressing that obviously is a very important thing in our congregation. So, I guess going back to your bio more than anything is like this is big for you, for your family. Moving into this area from another area that you've been at for many, many years.
Yep.
You're well anchored there.
Yep.
Maybe you could give us a little bit of insight. Why, how the girls are doing, how they're feeling about that. You know, how it's going to affect your family moving into that space.
Sure. I'll maybe go on me, and then Cindy can fill out the details on our family. I know from having had a few conversations already live here before this one, a big question that people are curious about is, so why, if you've been in Cochrane so long, why are you talking about Vernon and Vernon Alliance?
That's okay. I keep messing up your last name, so you can mess up Vernon, at least for now.
Vernon, yeah, it's all good.
I think the way I've come to think about it is I'm the primary person who needs to steward the gifts and the experience that I've got. And I feel I've been richly blessed in my life with lots of opportunities to learn, and a group of people in Cochrane who gave me a wide berth as a very young man to serve and lead. And I think my resume kind of shows that I've sought to be a person who wants to keep growing and not get content or uber comfortable in a situation, so that I can grow as a person. I'm a curious, learning kind of person, but I also think that God tends to develop me when I'm stepping into experiences or places, or there's things required of me that aren't already there in those liminal spots. That's really where I grow. And it's not always fun doing that, but it's sure you come out a stronger leader, and maybe if you're cooperating with the Holy Spirit, you look more like Jesus. So over the past few years, I have been asking God a little bit on how I best steward my gifts, and have wondered that potentially there might be a time in the future that there might be another context that what I can bring to the table as a leader might be a good fit for what a particular church community needs. When this one came up over the course of the summer, and at least what you as a church had put together in your profile, actually it was the first time in my life other than Cochrane that I thought, I wonder if that might be a good fit.
So our search committee did a good job.
I think so. And the second thing, and as I've talked to other folks who've been around here the past couple days, there is something geography-wise. Of course, lots of people would say they would love to live in your city, and those who've lived here before have told me, if you're considering coming to Vernon, you'll love it. It's a great place to live. Mm-hmm. But the natural environment has always been a deeply personal and spiritual, soulful part of my life. And as I've tried to consolidate who I am and what I'm about, I've written it down, just saying that I don't want my job to keep me away from clean water and rocks and forests. So I have in the past talked with God about, Cindy asked me a while back, if you could choose somewhere, this was long before Vernon was in, or not long before, but a short time, if you could pick anywhere. And I said, well, BC definitely is a province I would love to live in. The Okanagan might be a spot in BC that I would love to be. So something about me comes alive in natural environments and where there's an opportunity to enjoy creation, and I like some more aggressive things like riding bikes, skiing, being in the backcountry.
We have some of that here.
You do.
Yeah, just a bit.
And in terms of how our family's doing and what they're thinking, Cindy probably could answer that question well.
Yeah. I think it is a big question, right? What is your family? Like, you've been there for so long, and we have loved where we are. We love our community, our neighbors. Our church family has been amazing to us. And I think sometimes pastors' wives are like, church, or there may be stories of, but my story has been very much surrounded by great people, great families, great people praying for me, my kids. So I've always just tried to remind my kids, like, there's ups and downs with anything that your dad might do, and there's a ton of ups with how God has surrounded us with great people praying for us and great And so when this came around in July, there was a few things that happened, boom, 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 that I went, oh, okay, maybe that this Vernon might be something. And really nothing happened for a good 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So it was just Jason and I going on walks and being like, oh, I wonder, and praying, and But when pre-candidation happened, we were praying and talking, like, should we tell the girls? Should we not tell the girls? Like, we've never done this. We've never moved our family. So we decided that we would tell them before we came in end of September. And we were sitting in our backyard, having a campfire, and we're like, that trip we're going on to BC, that's not like a romantic getaway. That's like, Dad is pre-candidating at a church. And they're like, what? We might move. Oh my goodness. So there was, they responded quite well. And there was, our littlest one was maybe the saddest, because she's got lots of great friends even in the neighborhood. But it was something we were praying about it, and I think even for me, if someone would have said, God's going to ask you to move 3 years ago or 5 years ago, I would have been like, closed, there's just too much. My kids were little, but just different circumstances over the last few years, and when it came across, and I was open, I was ready, and I was able actually to come to Vernon 3 days after the idea came across, because my friend invited me to come to a lake that was near here, and I came to the town, and I was just like, okay, God, like, if you want me to live here, okay. And I didn't have much time here, so I feel that's kind of been the spirit with our kids. Like, they're open, and I can see ways that God has prepared them. And it's not to say it's not going to be really hard, or, everyone has stories of their kids moving. You have a story of your...
Yeah, I definitely have a few of those stories.
Right? Like, and people are like, your daughter's in grade 9, 11, are you sure? And I'm like, well, I certainly am hopeful this could be a great thing in their story, that God could speak to them, that it could mean great new friendships. It could, who knows? I don't know this story, but I know that I'm open, and I know that from what I can see, they're open, and from what I can see, there's ways that God's been preparing us, and I'm just hopeful that I feel like we have been obedient, and that we have been open to each step, and just kind of taken it a step at a time. And so, I'm hopeful that it could be a great thing for our family, and there'll be ups and downs like anything, but and yeah, you drive in from the airport and you're like, oh, I might live here. This is a beautiful place,
Yeah.
It is a gift. So so we'll see, but yeah.
Yeah, I had the same reaction when we moved here many years ago. It was like, we live here?
Yeah.
This is like a dream. I get
totally.
that for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let me just see what else we can do here. So, as far as church leadership is concerned, one of our KRAs have been the staff dynamics and how that's all comes into play. We've wrestled with some of that over the past number of months. Without knowing the personalities and all that, and maybe referring back to your days in Cochrane or your time in Cochrane, how do you see the staffing? Like, how describe your ideal staff dynamics and how that would work?
Well, I do think leading staff is, there's an art, there's a skill and an art, and maybe a responsibility to tend. It's a living organism. But I think the greatest thing for me is I've never had to do solo ministry. I've always worked on a team. I haven't been a solo pastor at any time. So working with team is maybe my first language in terms of church ministry. And I think, aside from the basics where, like, the reason you bring a staff people on is because there's lots of ministry that needs to be done and one person can't do it. Also, of course, we need to staff for different areas of ministry that we want to see accomplished. And but I also think that we want to staff different kinds of emphases or different ways we relate to God, different ways that different spiritual giftings. So there certainly is some variety that we want in personality, in how we relate to the Lord, and how we deliver what the Spirit has put in us. But at most basic, like the most important team dynamic for me is that we have a open, honest, and transparent relationship with one another. That the dynamic in how we're doing ministry is that everything's on the table, and if it can't be on all the table together, that we sort that out behind a closed door, so that when we get to the table, that we can be all there. And that means, I think, stewarding conflict well. I think as a younger leader, I was saying to another group that was here this afternoon, as a younger leader, I felt anytime there was conflict around the team that I should get the fire hose and put that out. And I do think we need to remain respectful and keep them on the rails healthily. But I think there's some great things that can come from team conflict, keeping short accounts with one another. And the other thing I'd say that is important in team leadership for me is that we are working off of the vision that the shared vision is held together. So everybody has different emphases, things that they would like to do, different ways they'd like to do it. What I feel has been really good in Cochrane, especially in the past couple of years as we've reshaped our vision, is that it clarifies for us, like, okay, that's a great idea, or you may think that, but how does that relate to what we've all bought off as an elders board, as a staff, that this is why we do things, and
this is kind of as the rubber hits the road kind of attitude.
So if it doesn't fit within that, then it doesn't fit. And it's not just because Jason, the boss, says it isn't. It's actually because we've agreed that this is the direction. So having a strong, cohesive vision, I think, is helpful in keeping the team aligned. And I, as the leader of the team, need to steward that and keep asking those questions as we draw up ministry plans. And I think as a leader, I like to ask people to give me a plan according to that vision, and we agree mutually that how they're going to be evaluated and how we're going to talk together is based on their plan and the execution of it and the follow through. And I need to resource them and allow them to change it as all things change, but we're working towards that together.
A barometer. You got to have some way to gauge it, right? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. We've got a few questions on our screen that have come in from our live stream. In general, would you say that you are a leader who says, go till I say stop, or stop till I say go? Have you made it a habit to develop new leaders and give them room to fly? So that kind of ties in with the staffing question as well.
I think, again, going back to what I just said regarding leaders, so if you're working in a particular area, this is your responsibility. We're going to make an agreement about what are the priorities, what needs to get done, and then I'm asking you as a coach, how do you think? We've agreed now that this is what we're after. We want to see these students grow, or we want to see the church connect with God through music, or we want to develop this prayer ministry. We're agreed that that's the ends. Okay, so there's a lot of freedom within that. How are we going to get there? And I would hope that if we have capable, resourceful, creative people, that they could have a great deal of freedom to do that. So if we can agree on the ends, and then they say, here's the means that I'm going to do that, and I can give some feedback on that, then I think that we go. And I hope, Glenn, the same dynamic is there as I report to the Board of Elders. I think we need to agree what are the ends. Jason, this is what we as the we have delegated authority as the elders, and here's what we're saying you need to accomplish. Okay, and then I hope that you give me latitude to say, okay, go for it. Within those boundaries, Jason, go for it. And then in the same way, I want to use my authority to allow those that serve, both those who are paid staff and those who are serving. If you're leading as a lay person, or you're leading Alpha or a certain outreach in the community or serving at Common Threads, we agree on the ends. And then, of course, there's latitude within that. And I don't want to stand over your shoulder and watch every move. I hope that I'm a go until I say stop guy. I think maybe that's overly simplistic, but that's what I'd like to do. And the other one is, have I developed the younger leaders? Yeah, I think so. I was a younger leader for a long time. And so it's only recently, as now a middle-aged man, that I'm getting into develop. I don't see myself as a younger leader. I've had my time, and now I'm a middle-aged leader. So in terms of staff, we have a couple people in their 30s. We have a few of us in our 40s. We have someone in their 50s. One of my staffers is in their 60s. So we have kind of a wide range of leaders. And I'm painfully aware, as we look ahead in the church in general across Canada, in the coming 20 years, there's a massive shift, a passing from generation to generation of who leads the church. So if we're not developing younger leaders here, who is going to lead us in the future? And I was saying to a group here this afternoon, I don't think that that's just me. I would challenge the church community to, if you have kids who have creativity, who have passion, who are great people, who are entrepreneurs, I would say to you, I need your help as parents to be challenging your kids to say, have you thought about giving your life and using your gifts in a ministry capacity to lead God's people in the church? Or we need some of the best and brightest to do that stuff. And you have a history here of developing young leaders in the past who are leading at the highest level in our denomination. You brought even their children back with Kyle Trigg has been here serving you, and as someone who was raised up that way. And I hope, I would love to see, I'm not going to tell my daughters they have to, but I'd love to see them do that. And I'd love to see many of our young people do that as well. But
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no. And again, that was one of our KRAs is next generation engagement. So that just feeds right into that for sure. What would you say is your greatest assets and challenges as a pastor?
Greatest asset? Look at how good looking he is. Look at how good looking he is.
No, thanks.
I thought you were going to say his wife.
Cindy and I looked at the video that we sent last week, and as we watched ourselves there in your service last week, we're like, holy cow, we're old now.
Getting old. Yeah.
But I understand. We were away, so I didn't get a chance, but I understand there was applause when you guys showed your video. So obviously they agreed with some.
That's good. That's good.
You must have a low standard here. The question is greatest assets. There's a few ways to frame that. I think maybe the Holy Spirit gifts all of us in different ways. And so as I've reflected on my spiritual gifts and how I've employed those for the sake of the church, teaching and exhortation, so not just teaching God's word, but calling us for response and obedience and application of the word is certainly something that I would say I bring that as an asset. I think at leadership and administration, I have a great interest and curiosity, not just in having ideas, but how do we implement and do that? And again, I've talked already quite a bit about purpose and vision and how that then leads to traction. I think I bring that as a central asset into the church. And my challenges. I think everybody who loves people, maybe some of us love conflict and love it, navigating the difficulty, but it's probably far and few between. And especially people who have pastoral gifts, we love people and we want. I think God has set it up. Do we want to please people? And that can be healthy and that can be unhealthy. But I think, what kind of pastor would you be if you didn't care what anybody thought? So I've had to work out over the years how much is the opinion or the dissatisfaction of people that's a liability. It's a strength, but it can be a great liability. I would say Cindy and I over the years have had to be the leading in a senior role in the church is demanding. And you know, I've observed Dwayne from afar in the past few months, and know just what COVID has demanded of us here, and I can see that he's working very, very hard on behalf of people that he loves here.
So that might be a segue to a different question. Is how do you deal with the stresses and strains of leadership?
Yeah,
I can tell you. He bikes. He's a biker.
So he just burns it off.
That's right.
well, it can be a liability. Cindy would say that definitely over the years, sometimes the demands of ministry take my best energy and time, and I wouldn't say that I've always been balanced, and so I've gotten better at that. But I would say if there's a liability that is potential, it certainly is there. But dealing with stress, certainly I've come to love the bike in the past 20 years, and I ride it a lot. We've also had some good fights over the years about how much I ride my bike.
Yes, biking and ministry, all that's his two loves.
Yeah, I think the only way I'd be doing that with you is on the e-bike.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think I could keep up.
I think we've taken care of our marriage, and we like to spend time together, going on dates on a moderately regular basis, and we've had the privilege with Cindy's business of having some pretty neat opportunities to travel to Europe, to Asia, Central America, go to the beach together. So we've had some great times where we just unplug, and we really consider ourselves privileged that way. And then, as I've already alluded to, the outdoors is great. And in the winter, I've stepped up the winter game with winter biking and started my journey into backcountry skiing a little bit. I'll take in November my avalanche safety training in anticipation of the potential of getting into the backcountry and doing some skiing that way, and maybe even seeing what Silver Star has to offer. So,
And yeah, I think you have to have checks in place. You know, just like marriage. I think pastors or any high demanding jobs like CEOs or whatever, I think that there's just seasons when it becomes so all consuming, or there's crisis, or there's a building or whatever, and you butt heads, or you just get weary or whatever. And I think in those times we've had good people around us who have said, okay, or we've just decided, okay, we need to pause here, we need to reset, or times when Jason's been discouraged, he's been able to go on a retreat or go do something, have some, that's a little bit of a shift or a course or something. So I think that's been a blessing for us. We've always had we've always had some sort of a stop, a reset. Okay, how do we want to move forward in this next season? Or, okay, this was getting a little too crazy. Or I just, either me or him, it was just like, okay, we need to pause. We need to figure this out. He's also been able to have 2 sabbaticals. So that's been really life-giving. This last one we were able to do an exchange with some friends who were in Malaysia, and Jason went and spoke in their church. They came and spoke in our church. We were able to see some missionary friends that we've had for years in China. So that was 2 months for our family to just be as a family, not be in ministry. And, so there's been some real gifts. And so I think with the crazinesses, we've also had some real blessings of times like that. So, but yeah.
So I guess as long as you recognize that and you can deal with it, that's a good thing. Next question up on the screen is, what type of pastoral leader are you?
Are there categories? Which box do you check?
Which box do you check?
Yeah, that's a broad question.
It is a very broad question.
So again, I think I've become clear on where I lead from strength, or the things that I talked about being a younger man, and I think when you start out in your 20s, you have a view of like, you know what, I'm good at all these things. I can do music, I can do leadership, I can do whatever. And part of the process of maturing is narrowing it down. So you know what, I'm in my best when I'm doing these things. So I think being the primary teacher in a church context is something that I love, and I've seen it bear fruit. I think, again, shaping vision and leading the team towards a preferred future is the kind of leader I am. But I am a pastor, and I was saying, I think to those that were seniors here a couple days ago, I guess it was just yesterday, I do think that there's this pastoral imagery which is working with sheep and caring for a flock. And so I'm not just a leader. I don't just want to lead for the sake of leading or just teach because I want to teach. What is interesting to me about being a pastor and a leader in a local church is that you get to do that with a particular group of people in a particular place at a particular time. So you're teaching to, if it's not too prideful to say, to my people, and leading the people that I live with and the people that see my life. So that's why I like local church ministry as opposed to just leading in general, is because there's a unique dynamic and privilege, and it's hard sometimes, but when it's working right, when there's a healthy relationship between pastor and people, there's a dynamic about that I think is unique, and I love, and I feel called to. I don't know if that's what whoever asked that and had in mind, but that's my answer.
Would you say you're relational as far as your congregation is concerned? You can relate to them, you can interact with them quite comfortably and easily?
You know, you do these over the course of time. I've done assessments of telling me what kind of leader I am and guy. So one of the measurements that I've done is called the Berkman method, and they have a way of gauging it. And one of the gauges on that is social energy. Is how are you in a social environment? Are you hiding in a corner? Are you out there? And that said that I have high social energy. So I'm quite, I don't know. In some ways, you as a church are watching and seeing what kind of a social guy is this. But in general, self-evaluation, and I hope I have decent self-awareness. I think I can do fine navigating and being with people, talking, getting to know them. I am not, however, an extrovert. So in terms of when it comes time when being in this environment is over, I will quite enjoy going for a bike ride by myself or with one or two people. I will not mind doing some reading. I will not mind doing some reflection. I will not mind having large amounts of quiet time. That generally, I think that refills me, but I enjoy and am quite comfortable in social environments, and I feel, again, we're talking people. Shy. It's that is to be expected.
Yeah.
And I think it's exactly the way our previous pastors treated their lives as well. You know, because with Ian, when Ian Trigg was here, and Stuart as well, you need that downtime. You put a lot of energy and time into ministry, and you need that time away. You need to have that relaxed, get away from it type of time. It recharges.
Come home and his kids could just, be so quiet and peaceful and everything.
Yes. Does that sound like your household?
It's just a quiet place.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can quite imagine having all those girls running around there, how quiet that is. All right, maybe we'll just ask another one. No more questions. Oh, there we go. We got 3 or 4 minutes here. Is there anything else you'd like to share to close us off for the evening?
Well, Cindy says I talk so much. So, Cindy, is there anything more that you would like to share?
Anything else I want to share? Good one. I just think this has been an adventure. It's been an exciting adventure, and it's been fun to see Jason really reflecting, like, who am I as a pastor? What are my, and look, kind of going, when I read the job description going, yeah, that's Jason. And so just, it's for us, we haven't been in this kind of situation before. So for us, just kind of talking about it, praying about it, trusting in lots of unknowns yet, and just being here and waiting. And so your people have been very warm so far. I've only met the Board of Elders and their wives a couple weeks ago, and I'm about
and husbands.
Nice. Yes, and husband. I love that. So I'm excited. I know Jason's already met a whole bunch of you, and I'm looking forward to the next few days of just getting to meet many more. And I think there might be this awkward social thing with should we hug? We probably should, because it's COVID. I like to shake people's hands and talk to them, but we'll just have to navigate that whole how do we meet and greet, because there's a drive-through, right? But anyways, we're excited to be here. And
that's different because of COVID.
Different.
Obviously, we have
yes. So normally we would be shaking your hands and talking to you and maybe hugging you, but we'll have to just navigate that with COVID. So
jumping off of that, I would say, Glenn, what Cindy said is, regardless of how this candidation ends, whether we feel it's mutually that it's a good fit, or whether we go, that's as far as we want to take it. The process has been very healthy for Cindy and I, and for me, and it's been a good time for my own spiritual development, even just to consider the possibilities.
Just to go through the process.
That's right. So it's a privilege, and I know with those of you who are online tonight, I know your church has a deep history of being an influence for the kingdom of God and a representative of Jesus in the North Okanagan in the past, and I expect that God would want that for you in the future. If we get to be a part of that, that's great, and I hope that we could contribute. And if not, I still hope the same thing, and wish you God's blessing, however this process turns out.
And there's a drive-by meet and greet, and I think you could register through the website. And who would not want to register for a drive-through meet and greet?
No kidding. Isn't that unique?
Fun?
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. I might just show up just to watch. It sounds great.
Exactly.
I'd like to say on behalf of the Board of Elders, thank you. Thank you for going through this process. It's arduous. There's a lot. There's a lot involved. I mean, there's a lot of preparation right from the time that, the call came out looking for a lead pastor up until this point. So it's been quite a process. You've been hanging in. Thank you, and you've been doing it very graciously. We've had some really good conversations, and we look forward to where God's going to take this. It's really an interesting time. I want to thank everybody for attending this evening. It's been a lot of fun for me to get to know you a little bit better, and we look forward to tomorrow evening. We're going to have another question and answer evening. One of the other elders, Shelley Reeves, is going to host that one. Looking forward to that.
Yay, Shelley.
Yay, Shelley. We also have tomorrow a drive-by meet and greet. So you can register on the website. You do have to register, even though you're driving through, because from the contact tracing.
Right,
yeah, thank you. From the contact tracing, we still need to make sure that you're registered to come and meet Jason and Cindy. So please register and come by and see. And as well, Jason's preaching this weekend on Saturday night. I'll be hosting on Saturday night and on Sunday morning as well. So we look forward to having a full house, because we are opening the doors for that, but it's all by pre-register. So make sure you get in and register right away if you can. So thank you once again.
Thank you,
very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a great night, everybody.